Stanley Cohen, a British sociologist, believed that society seemed to be subject every now and again to periods of moral panic, and that it is presented in a stylised and stereotypical fashion by the mass media. He even went as far as to suggest in his book Folk Devils and Moral Panics that these panics are manned by politicians, editors, bishops and other right-thinking people. Cohen's point was proven time and time again, especially in 1982 when the video nasty hysteria first began, causing a moral panic, major changes to UK media law, and one of the most significant legal changes for how the British Board of Classification, also known as the BBFC, handled censorship. But the question stood, was these films indeed nasty and within reason to cause a moral panic, or was it, as stated, simply a panic?
Video Nasties, the Home Secretary.
Particular video nasty contains that, and that.
How can you judge on video nasty? You've never seen one.
The 1980s, a time for big hair, bold looks, the legendary icons and iconic horrors, such as Evil Dead, Child's Play, Critters, Cannibal, Holocaust, The Thing and so many more. All these films were graphic, fresh, and tested the waters for the ocean of horror we now know today. These films at the time were able to ensure only the intended mature audiences were able to watch these films, were either through the cinema or watching late night TV broadcasts, which meant no children were able to watch. However, in 1979, home videos began to become an extremely popular form of viewing, taking over Britain. This is where issues began to take form, as the films that were getting put on the shelves had not been subjected to the censorship of the BBFC, which meant after years of ensuring that Britain's eyes wouldn't be exposed to shocking and disturbing imagery with the combined forces of the Obscene Publications Act and the BBFC, alongside other organisations, it had become impossible to prevent films labelled as dangerous imagery from being exposed to the country, especially children. When the tabloids got a hold of this loophole, the papers went into a frenzy, targeting these films and blaming them for violent acts, causing the fear of copycat crimes to emerge, pointing the blame of these sadistic crimes at horrors, eventually getting them the very well-known name of video nasties. The first national press story was released on May 12, 1982 by the Mail, and it was labelled The Secret Video Show. In this article, it warned the people of Britain that more and more children are catching on to the fact that their parents' machine can give them the opportunity to watch the worst excesses of cinema, sex and violence. Following this, more tabloids began to jump at the headline story of video nasties and the corruption of our youth. They used such headlines as the rape of our children's minds in the Daily Mail, which really pushed the panic amongst concerned parents. As more and more articles were released, this caught the attention of parents who were outraged, especially one woman by the name of Mary Whitehouse from the NVALA, who launched a publicised campaign against the corruption of our children through horrors and graphic violence. Whitehouse ran a campaign called Cleaning Up TV. In doing so, she led outraged parents across the country and pressed for the resignation of the DPP, the Director of Public Prosecutions, referring to their hearings as a public scandal and a farce. She also referred to the video nasty.
I have never seen a video nasty.
How can you judge on a video nasty? You've never seen one.
As appalling. She, in this scenario, is another example of a key role in Cohen's theory. She is the moral entrepreneur who plays the role of driving moral panics forward and further unsettling the public by acting almost as a liberator. In this crusade, and following the public outrage, the Director of Public Prosecutions created a list of video nasties, which included such films as I Spit on Your Grave, Cannibal, Holocaust or Driller Killer, sending it to enforcement officers who were sent to seize all tapes and prosecute distributors under the Obscene Publications Act, an act which prohibits the distribution of material that will deprave and corrupt the people that view. Any film deemed too horrific to receive a certificate was then illegal to buy, sell or own any form of it. These raids are what Cohen in his theory refers to as escalation, as it causes an existing law that's already in place to be enforced harsher by the authorities. This exaggerates the problem, pushing the panic further and watering the seed of fear and doubt that's already growing in the public's heads. After 2 years of panic and outrage, the the Video Recordings Act was passed on the 12th of July 1984. This act required all video titles to be classified by the BBFC, granting them statutory powers, meaning they now had the power to make decisions and enforce regulations. And it wasn't until between 1987 and 1990 that the DPP stopped prosecuting distributors. Many films after this pandemic remained in uncertified limbo, meaning they were still banned for up to 15 years after the Video Recordings Act. So after all this, the question still remained, were video nasties really corrupting the minds of our youth? Well, during this whole panic, a man known as David Holbrook, who was known for many things, from being a poet, to a teacher, to a commentator on culture, quoted a study that was carried out by the US government by the National Institute of Mental Health on the effects of violence on TV. Holbrook stated that they came to a conclusion that the evidence was overwhelming and that it definitely led to aggressive behaviour. What Holbrook failed to mention, however, was that the reports of the study were highly questionable. For example, there were 2 cases during the video nasty hysteria that were used to drive panic. One on June 28, 1993, with an 18-year-old boy who assaulted some women, which was blamed on video nasties but later revealed to be that this intention was already there before he even began watching these films. And then they claimed again on August 5th, 1983 that another rapist was addicted to video nasties, but failing to mention that he had had a severe personality change from an accident, had drank excessively and taken drugs before committing the rape. Overall, in my opinion, I believe that violent films is not the core route for criminal and violent behaviour, but rather something that can push a tendency that was already there. I do agree that this pandemic did bring good, as the age ratings are now way more appropriate and more precautions are in place to ensure that children don't watch something they can't understand. But I do agree that these films weren't as concerning as the tabloids pushed them to be, and that Stanley Cohen was correct in his theory that mass panics amongst the public are pushed by the media to cause pressure onto politicians into supporting and acting on the panic they created. Thank you for watching.